Have you wondered about living elsewhere in your retirement? Well, we have almost daily. No, it's not a simple decision, especially when two people are involved.
Hi, this is
Gil
and Gene of Retire There, a podcast about retirement destinations. We live in Brooklyn, New York. Having grown up and worked in this area of the country, we're hoping to relocate when we're both retired. For us, it's the weather, the chaos, the noise, and the yearning to be near nature and not within 3 feet of human beings.
That's right. In February 2020, we embarked on our journey to find that special place. We spent a week in Winter Park, Florida, which is beautiful, but something said it wasn't for us. As we were planning for the next trip, the pandemic arrived. Gene then gave birth.
I gave birth?
To this podcast. With so many baby boomers retiring, many must be relocating. Why not connect with and learn from them?
Here's a little background about us.
I'm Asian, born in Brazil, and grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm an engineer turned attorney turned podcaster. I recently retired from a university career practicing higher education law. I love the academic environment, but it was time to do something else. I no longer have to set an alarm, drive in BQE traffic, or work with people who don't always share the same principles. Ooh, did I just say that? You bet I did. I traded all that in to binge crime dramas into the wee hours, just a little bit, to develop the podcast, to volunteer, practice metalsmithing, tackle our possessions. No regrets so far. Gene?
I'm not Asian, and as Gil mentioned, I'm not retired. I'm just plain tired.
Oh.
Born and raised in Long Island, New York, a place I always wanted to leave. I'm a law librarian working in a court who loves his job, but we're retired by the time we select our ideal location. We will be speaking to folks from across the street to across the globe who have moved to their dream venues and more. So please stay tuned and remember, if you know anyone who has moved anywhere for retirement, let us know.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Today we'll be chatting with Karen Espig, who moved from Ottawa, Canada to Pogradec, Albania. Albania is a small mountainous country in the Balkan Peninsula. The east side of the country provides a long coastline on the Adriatic and Ionian Seas. Montenegro and Kosovo to the north, North Macedonia to the east, and Greece to the south. It has a Muslim majority, or at least 50%, a legacy of its centuries of Ottoman rule. After World War II, Albania became a Stalinist state under Enver Hoxha and remained staunchly isolationist until its transition to democracy after 1990. The 1992 elections ended 47 years of communist rule. Located in East Albania, along the shore of Lake Ohrid, sits the resort city of Pogradec. Although Pogradec is not on the ocean, being on a large lake makes it a beach city. It is the 11th most populous city in Albania with a population of around 61,000. The entire country only has 2.7 million people. It's situated between two mountain ranges, though it is a city lying next to both mountains and water. Much of the city's appeal is in its natural beauty, which is characterized by the alluring glass-like waters, and you'll see in our photos on Instagram, of the lake and the nearby Dralan National Park. Pogradec is also great for foodies, especially those who like freshwater fish, such as gillen. And since it's a small city, it's very walkable. Gene?
Karen was born and raised in Ottawa, Canada. She attended university courses in humanities and had a 21-year career with the Canadian federal government. She is also a self-taught artist and has always been involved in creative projects, but chose to pursue art in a serious way beginning in 2018. Karen is now freelancing with flexible and variable hours. If she is not traveling, she works about 20 hours a week doing conversational English with international students and around 10 hours a week writing articles for herself and on a lifestyle blog. The remaining hours are dedicated to the creation of art. She's a painter, working mainly in oils. Her interests include naturally art, travel, writing, and photography. Hi, Karen, and welcome to Retire There. There are lots of places in the world. How in the world did you wind up in Albania and specifically Pogradec?
Hi, Jean and Gil. Nice to meet you. I ended up in Pogradec after I'd ruled out some other countries and decided on Albania. And then I narrowed down to Pogradec. Why Albania? It came down to cost of living. living on water, and the ability to get a long stay visa or a residence permit easily, because I was already dealing with a great deal of stress of moving abroad, getting rid of all of my possessions, leaving my job, leaving my family, that I wanted to sort of pick a country where I could move to and not have additional problems because of a difficult residency process.
And you say you work, so you have a work visa?
Well, I'm temporary residence permit, and it's based on me being self-employed. There are different types, and that's the one that seemed most appropriate for me. So I'm a self-employed artist. I pay social insurance taxes, I guess is what you would call it, and I pay municipal taxes as a business in Pogradec.
Albania made it easy for you to go there as opposed to other countries, I suppose?
Yeah, just from what I'd read, I did a lot of searches, joined expat groups, and just to see the comments from some of the other countries and ones that it seemed like it was problematic, I just sort of moved on because as I said, I wanted something fairly straightforward. I did hire a consulting agency to help me with my visa, but basically they told me what was required. I provided documents and showed up at various appointments. Very little really was required of me. It went fairly smoothly and quickly. Overall, was a very positive experience and not very burdensome for me.
And why did you leave Ottawa? I mean, you could have just stayed there, I assume, right?
Yeah. When I was pondering all this, I was 53, I guess. And I had already planned to retire a little early at 60. Then the lockdown happened in 2020, of course, and suddenly I was working from home and had a lot of time on my hands to think about life and what I wanted to do. I was looking at the numbers. When I retired at 60, how much would my pension be? So I looked at that calculation, and then I looked at, okay, how much will my pension be if I retire at 58? And and then I just kept going down until I was down to 53 at the time. And I'm like, my rent was so high in Ottawa that even if I was 60 and I got my full pension amount, I was going to have to leave Ottawa. There's no way I could live there. Then I'm like, well, where am I going to live? I want to have a good quality of life if I'm, when I'm retired. So then I started seriously looking, okay, what does it cost to live somewhere else? And I've always wanted to travel much more in Europe. So now I'm like, well, maybe I could live in Europe. Then I started pricing how much does it cost to live in this country and this country. And then next thing I know, I'm sending in my retirement letter. And
Wow.
Wow. Well, okay, two things. You're able to retire early. And although we read that you're still kind of semi working, but doing wonderful things, because I love those wonderful things that you're doing. Did you consider other European cities? Like, I'm trying to understand, was Albania the most economical? Had you been there before? Do you have relatives there?
I had not been to Albania or really anywhere in Europe other than a short trip to Paris, many
Right.
years ago.
Uh-huh.
From my job, I have a small pension. So what happens when you retire early is the lower amount because you're starting earlier. I had sort of a rough amount of what it was going to cost. And yes, I looked at many other European countries and cities. Portugal and Spain, are the sort of the reflex hotspot for American and Canadian retirees anyway. So I looked at those, but they were still a little out of my price range. There were visas that I could qualify for, long stay visas. So then I'm like, well, what's cheaper? So I moved east. I looked at Croatia, dreamed about Greece and Italy, but just too difficult, too expensive. So Georgia is another option, but it's a little too far east. So I don't know. I stumbled onto Albania. I didn't see any downside. I just kept everything I looked up sounded good. Obviously, you're not getting the full picture when you're doing research on the internet. I felt good that I had a good idea of what it was going to be like there. It looked beautiful. It actually reminded me a little bit of Canada, but on a very condensed scale. So lakes and rivers and mountains, but all sort of in the same neighborhood. That's how it ended up choosing Albania.
When you moved there, you had never been to Albania before?
No. And I didn't know any Albanian. Other than, so I started language training in January of 2022, and then I moved here in February. So I had that was my only Albanian contact, is my language tutor that lived in Tirana, Albania. Yeah, other than that, I was going in cold.
Wow, no fear. kudos. You're a single woman moving to a foreign country. So are your linguistic skills? I mean, I have to say, you also teach language. I mean, you teach English.
Well,
And
I'll stop you there. I don't teach. I'm not a qualified teacher. I participate in conversational English. So it's people that want to practice their English with a native speaker.
I see. And so have you learned Albanian?
I would say I'm a slow student, but yes, I have learned the basics. Tutor is excellent. And then just living here, I can hear how things are pronounced. So that's been very helpful. And I read the signs, of course, and I can sound out the sounds. And I'm nowhere near any kind of fluent, but I can go to the grocery store. I can ask how much things cost or what time something is at, which is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
So you are so lucky that you did this in the internet age, because if you did it before, the research would have been nearly impossible, right?
Yeah.
I assume.
I can't even imagine how this would have happened.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, we don't realize, I mean, that's the upside of technology, that it allowed so many people to do, what you did. Did we talk about how you homed in on the city?
Well, yeah, we didn't yet. I really have always wanted to live on water. The dream of living on the seaside it's still there. I love water so much. I did look at the seaside cities first, and the big three there is Saranda, Durrës, and Vlora. So I looked at all of those, and then I also looked at Pogradec, which is on this huge ancient lake. It's actually one of the oldest lakes in Europe. Usually lakes, I guess, have a lifespan and they dry up over time. This one doesn't, because of the way it was formed. So it's this beautiful old lake. It just really started to appeal to me because it's less touristy. There is a definite tourist time, which is July and August. However, it's all or a majority of Albanian tourists. So it's families that come. Okay. There's a few international tourists, but most of the international tourists go to those coastline cities. The beaches are more extravagant. There's nicer resorts on the coastline beaches, whereas Pogradec it's kind of like lake country. It's a very different feel, which I really like. So it gets a bit busy, but not crazy busy during tours.
Nice. And what is the name of that lake that you mentioned that hasn't dried up?
Yeah, it depends on what language you're saying it in. So in English, I would say Lake Ohrid. Okay. In Albanian, it'd be Oher. In North Macedonian, it would be Ohrid.
I have to tell you, I was looking at photographs of Pogradec, and it's absolutely beautiful because you have the mountains, then the city, the beautiful lake. It's just it's incredible.
Every time
you're surrounded by nature.
Yeah, it is. The town itself is simple. There's no real touristy area, no old town or quaint little. It's all about the shoreline, the boardwalk, the lake, which is just incredibly beautiful.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I wanted to, at this point, talk about the currency. I'm looking at Albanian lek to US dollars. It's 1 lek to, now this is going to be very little, 0.0103 US dollar. Is that the currency?
Yeah. So usually it's like 100 lek is probably then whatever, $1.15 American, maybe, or a dollar. Okay. So add the 2 zeros and to everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Albania is not in the European Union, right?
No.
Okay. So let's talk about a city that you had not known of except for a little dot on Google Earth.
Yeah.
How did you go about housing? Did you rent? Did you buy?
Definitely rent, not in any position to buy. Yeah, that is the trickiest part about a small town. So in Tirana, there are more resources. There's rental agents. There's a robust expat community that can help you out. Pogradec, there's none of that. So I found a place through, I think it was Airbnb. Actually, I found a bunch of places, sent a blast of emails out saying, in theory, is this available for a long-term rental? What would it cost? I ended up with one that was very reasonable. That was arranged ahead of time. Knowing what I know now, that was not the best way to go about it. That is what I did. I arrived in Albania, stayed in Tirana for, I think, 2 nights, just to meet my residency consultant and get a feel for things, recover from jet lag a bit. Yeah. Went to Pogradec and I had an Airbnb for 3 nights. And then I was to move into this new apartment, which I did. It ended up being not a suitable apartment for me. I won't get into why. So then I was in a position where I had to quickly find a new apartment. So then I got through word of mouth and I ended up staying there for a year. And then I decided it was with a family. So I was basically renting rooms as opposed to an independent apartment. I was ready and needed to have my own space after a year of that. So now I have my own apartment, which I just love. It's the most fantastic apartment I've ever been in. So now I'm settled here and I feel, comfortable here.
Okay, so just a quick recap. You arrived, you stayed 3 days in an Airbnb. Well, after the hotel, I guess. 3 days in the Airbnb.
I did that because it's a foreign country. I have no idea if people are good for their word. So I had the insurance. I had this Airbnb so I got to town. I got to Pogradec and I had the Airbnb for 3 nights in case it wasn't legit, this apartment. I arranged to rent for a year. So it turned out to be, but it ended up being not a suitable place for me to live. It didn't work for me. So.
And was it easy to break the contract?
Yes. So we had just signed the lease and then we started having problems with the apartment. I will say in general, because Albania is a developing country, many rules, both official and unofficial, are fluid. So that means they change legally and sometimes they just change informally. What ended up working there is I was very unhappy. The landlady was just a lovely woman. So I gave her I had paid first month's rent. I gave her an extra, basically $100 US to just forget about the whole thing. And she was gracious enough to let me get away with that.
Oh, very nice.
In Tirana, from what I understand, it's a little more formalized and people pay 2 months rent plus another security deposit. I got lucky. It'll just depend. There's no hard and fast rules on contracts, housing.
The place you live in is very nice. How did you find that place?
So this was through a friend of mine that I met, another expat who was living in this apartment. And he has since moved to Mexico. So we would spend time together in Pogradec, more or less a weekly basis. And then he's like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to go to Mexico. And I'm like, well, I think I really want your apartment. No offense, but I really would like your apartment. So he spoke to the landlord and it was all arranged and just worked out perfectly. Yeah.
Wow.
Great. And are there a lot of expats in town?
Now there's pretty much me. There are some other, I guess they're expats. There's a number of religious or educational organizations in town. I don't know really. I know one person in that group of people, but I don't really hang out with them. I think there are other expats here. I don't know them at this point. I did have this one friend that moved to Mexico, and then I had another lady who was living in Pogradec, and she's temporarily anyway back in the US. I'm hoping she comes back, but really I'm mostly by myself right now.
Yeah. Wow. I have to give you credit, Karen.
Yeah.
To do what you've done. I mean, we have listeners who have asked us to feature more single women who make the move. On behalf of these ladies, I have to ask you, were you ever afraid of just being alone as a female? Is the city, are there areas that you already know that you shouldn't travel to and so forth?
In Pogradec, I would say no, there's not an unsafe area. It's a small town. It pretty much shuts down at 9:00. Even on a Saturday in the summer at midnight, it's down. It's over. During non-tourist season, by 10:00, if you're walking down on the boardwalk on the water, you might be alone. The city, everybody goes home.
Wow.
Wow.
It's a little unnerving, actually. Now, if we're talking about Tirana or some of the coastal cities where there's a bigger mix of people, maybe there's more issues. I don't know. I haven't lived there, but here it's locals and then the small group of foreigners that are here. It feels very safe.
That's very nice to hear.
And as far as other single women, I mean, we're told a lot of things to be afraid of and to not do. and just try to throw as much of that out as you can. It's just not accurate.
Yeah.
You know?
All right. Good to know.
And so there aren't many or any other expats around. Do the locals speak English?
Not very much. No.
Wow.
That has been the most, not in this town. Like you get a little more in Tirana, because during communist rule, there was very little, well, no Western influence. And English was not taught in schools. From what I understand, some French and Russian was taught in schools. So English wasn't taught here until post 90, 91, 92. So the youngest generation, most of them have learned some English in school. However, they don't really get to practice it. Anytime I do hear someone speaking English that's Albanian, it's a treat.
Shock. Yeah.
So I just kind of assume nobody does, because there's very little.
In terms of housing, what's the pricing like?
Yeah. So in Pogradec, of course, is cheaper because it's a small town. So here, rents, I would say, for non-locals, because I'm sure there's a different price there. But I would say it's fairly easy to get something around 200 US, 250 US, a good size apartment. And then you would pay utilities on top of that, utilities and water. So electric and water.
Is that a 1-bedroom or?
Yeah, 1 bedroom, possibly even a 2.
Oh,
Wow.
But a good size. Yeah, I have a 2-bedroom. I'm paying 330 US.
wow.
And that includes utilities, which is I prefer that. I prefer to not have to worry about it.
Sure.
Now in Tirana, there's a full range, but I would say the absolute lowest rent is probably 250 US, but it's more likely going to be around 400 US, I would say, just from what other people for a 1-bedroom. But it's a big city with a lot more amenities, conveniences, options.
Mm-hmm. Did it come furnished, your place?
Yes, all those prices are furnished apartments. Yeah.
Okay. And just if you wouldn't mind running by, what does that include when you say totally furnished? Can you just move in with a suitcase of clothes?
Yeah, pretty much. You're going to need probably a few specific kitchen items, or maybe some towels or sheets, linens if you're particular. But basically, yeah.
It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so yours includes utility, which is, I guess, the electricity, the heating, the gas, or what have you. On top of that, I guess you obviously pay for your own Wi-Fi and things of that nature, services.
Yeah, I worked it out with my landlord that he arranges it and I just pay him the amount. But yes, often it's an extra, but it's also not expensive. It's roughly about like $10 US a month for Wi-Fi, for internet.
Wow.
Incredible.
And what does your cell phone cost approximately?
My cell phone's about, again, $10 US.
Wow.
A plan. So
That
much
is
cheaper
so nice.
than Canada and the US.
Yeah.
My Canadian cell phone was like 60 US. It was about 75 Canadian every month.
In terms of banking, because it seems like your landlord was very helpful, but in order to just get around, I was just thinking a couple of things, and one comes to mind is banking. Did you open an account there, or did you keep, I assume you kept some with Canada, right? I mean, you have a federal pension, which is wonderful. That's what Jean's going to be getting. And we did the math the same way as you, if you leave a little earlier, a little later, but for him, the penalty just seemed a little more than we.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I have one more year.
Yeah, he's hanging in
you can do
one
it.
more year to get the full pension. Yeah. So talk to us about that. How was that experience?
There's a couple issues there. Now with the residency process, sometimes they're requiring people to open a bank account. Depending on the type of resident permit you're getting. So again, these rules are fluid. But for example, if you're being told you need to open an account for your permit, then that's what you'll need to do. And you'll need to put a certain amount of money in. I didn't have to do that for mine. At no point have I been required to open a bank account. So I haven't until recently, and then I'll come back to that. So for banking, I've kept all my Canadian stuff open because my credit cards are Canadian. As you say, my pension, everything goes automatically in there. I still have bills to pay in Canada, and I pay for storage in Canada. And so everything, I didn't change anything of my Canadian account. I did open an international account. So I opened a WISE account. And again, I found this through my research. and it's been fantastic. There's a couple other providers. One's Revolut. I don't know much about it, but I have seen other expats recommend it. But I use Wise. So what happens is I transfer money from my Canadian account into my Wise online international account. And it comes with a debit card. And I arranged all this before I left Canada. Set that up and I got the debit card before I left Canada. So I moved money into this international account. And then any country that I am in, I just put my Wise debit card in a machine and I take out that country's currency.
Oh, nice.
In some countries, there's banks that there's no extra charges. So I sort of keep notes if I find them.
Yeah, really?
Then there's some countries where I haven't found one yet. So I just pay whatever the, 5 to 7 euros per withdrawal. It's great for Albania because Albania is a cash country. Very few places take cards of any kind, debit or credit. You are withdrawing from bank machines. So it's been fantastic. The Wise account has very low fees. So I might pay a couple of dollars or $1. I might pay 50 cents for the transfer from Canada to Wise. Like, it's been very economical and completely worth it. And it's a free, like there's no monthly fees on it.
Amazing.
And I can get paid or pay other people in multiple currencies.
Oh, nice.
So, for example, the writing I do, they pay me in euros. I send them a Wise invoice and they pay me and it goes into my Wise Euro account. It's fantastic. It really is. They don't have to take LEC. So that's not set up.
Okay. But the day-to-day, is it when you buy, groceries or whatever, is it LEC or is it euros?
It's LEC. Yeah. You'll see posts where it's saying, everyone will also accept euros. No, that's not the case. You might luck out. And especially in, the touristy areas, yes, some businesses might accept euros. You're always going to get a better deal if you're dealing with native currency.
Yeah.
But taxi drivers or that type, yes, they'll accept euros. So then back to the bank account. Yes. I went to go pay my bill, my Social Security tax bill a couple months ago. And the teller said, "Oh, why don't," and she speaks English. So this is why I go to this bank.
Oh, wow.
She said, "Why don't you open an account?" I said, "Why do I need to open an account?" She goes, "Well, you'll pay the fees you'll pay because I pay a bank fee every time I pay a bill. The fees will be half. So you'll save quite a bit of money." What I needed to pay for the account, and it was going to be worth it. So I said, "Sure, sign me up." So this was 2 months ago. I still don't have an account.
What?
So yeah. Should you open a bank account? I would say only if you're required to. So she told me it was going to take 3 days. And her supervisor said 3 days. So I went back 4 days later. And then they said, "No, it's going to take 2 weeks." So I'm like, okay. So I went back 2 weeks later. So now they just have my phone number. And whenever it gets set up, they're going to call me.
So you didn't leave any money with them?
No.
Oh, okay.
I gave them I had to give them my accountants. I have an accountant for my business. It's a requirement.
Okay.
So I gave them her contact info because she had to verify that I'm a business, and that's all I needed to do. Yeah, no, they don't have any money or anything.
Okay.
So
okay.
It's just not developed yet. They haven't worked it out.
But just so I'm clear, what would require a bank account? Mm-hmm. You had mentioned there are certain individuals that the country imposes on the individual to open an account.
For some residence permits, for example, the person whose apartment I assumed, he thought about applying for residency and he was told he had to open a bank account, put a certain amount in it. So this was a directive through immigration. So again, I suspect it depends the type of residency permit you are applying for.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
But that's something people can research in it ahead of time.
Yeah. And be prepared that it might be something you need to do.
Mm-hmm. But there's no financial threshold to obtain a long-term residency in.
Again, it depends on the type. But it's certainly any threshold is much lower than, say, Italy, Greece, Spain. It's
right.
A lot lower.
Right. We had a guest who was in Ireland and she loved it there. It was her calling, so to speak, but they increased the threshold and unfortunately she couldn't meet it. Yeah. So she wound up going back to the US and that was tough.
Let's move on to healthcare. How have you found the healthcare there so far?
Not impressed, being perfectly blunt. Some people have, said, "Oh, it's fantastic." that reaction may be just because it's free or low cost. You're coming from the States where you're paying exorbitant fees for things out of pocket. But even so, the quality of care is inconsistent. I would say sometimes it's fantastic and sometimes it's not. It's just the culture of medicine, if I can say, is just not what I would like coming from Canada. Whereas the culture of medicine is very much care-based and everything is about quality of care. And Canada's not perfect either, but the culture of care is really important. They haven't established that here, I would say, is my feeling about it. So I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean,
but there is national health care that is free. Like you're not going to die in the streets. If something happens, there are many private hospitals and there's the national system, and you're not going to pay a ton of money. You're going to get help. I think my concern is more people that have chronic conditions or are worried about an acute condition like a heart condition or something like that. I would express caution for those people thinking of coming here because it's just not there yet.
Did you look into that beforehand? Did you need to identify a primary care just in case? And was that difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I did my standard search in my YouTube search.
Yeah.
And sort of got the same inconsistent information, but a lot of just there's private care available. There seemed to be solutions, but they weren't clear.
Okay.
Then once I got here, I mean, I had a one doctor visit once when I had a severe cough last year, and I got appropriate care and appropriate medicine through the public system in Pogradec. But I do have a health condition that requires prescriptions. And unfortunately, none of the prescriptions I take are available not only in Albania, but they're also not available in Europe.
Oh.
So my new plan, so now I fill them in Canada and I'll just have to do regular visits to Canada and bring them with a doctor's letter to Albania. So that's my workaround. I found out that they had healthcare. I sort of got some info, but no matter what, it's not going to be exactly what you expect.
Sure.
Because it's not a fully developed country in any of its infrastructures, including medicine.
Okay.
So did you say you're already on the national healthcare plan?
Yes, because I'm a self-employed person and I pay about $100 US a month. Because it's kind of, I don't know if it's exactly the same in the US. In Canada, we pay CPP, Canada Pension Plan, and then the employer pays, like if you work for someone, you pay it and the employer pays it.
Right.
As a self-employed person in Canada and also here, you pay both portions. So maybe it would just be $50 a month if you don't have the same type of permit I have, but it's about $100 a month. But yes, I have national health care.
How often do you go back to Canada?
I was just there in April, so that was about 15 months I was here before going back. And my hope is roughly every 18 months.
Okay.
Barring any urgent need to go back, but that's sort of the rough plan.
Now, something you mentioned earlier that's been stuck in my mind because we recorded an episode earlier about storage units, not about storage, but about organizing. So you left Ottawa, you had your full life of content. How did you manage that? And was the move to Albania, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say...
Did you go there with 3 suitcases?
Say, how do you know what to put in storage? Because I'm assuming you're aware or conscious of the storage costs. And in Canada, like the US, I'm sure it's not that cheap. Talk to us about that. I'm very curious.
Yeah, that was the whole downsizing is a process.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy one. It's really not. So I started about maybe 6 to 9 months before my departure, getting rid of things.
That's a short period. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't own a home. I was renting. So, and it was an apartment. So I had the contents of a 2-bedroom apartment. And one of the rooms was my adult son's stuff, who was at college.
Yeah.
So not all mine, but so I started with the easy stuff. How we get so many things, I don't know, but I seem to have a ton of kitchen stuff that I'd never used.
Right.
I got rid of the easy stuff first. I never stopped sort of once I'd made the decision. I was always getting rid of things.
Right.
I'd touch something in the cupboard. It's like, get rid of it if I had made a decision about it.
Yeah.
So it is a long process. By the time I got down to, the last few months, and then, you price out the storage units, you're like, okay, then you're like, okay, I need to be a little more serious about this because I can't afford, a big unit. So I got down to the size. I knew what size I was going to be dealing with. Then it was like, well, all I really have to store is my finished paintings because they have to be stored, safely so that they don't get damaged over time. So I knew I had my paintings to store. And then the extra space was whatever else, which boiled down to, photos and books and some clothes. And there's probably a few things I shouldn't have bothered to store, but you get to a point where you just can't. Anyway, it's a 5x7x9 unit.
Okay.
Which is pretty full, not to the rafters full, but pretty full.
Okay.
But it's difficult and it's exhausting.
Right.
Because it's a million decisions. Every piece of paper is a decision. I would recommend people start early and do what they feel, do the easy stuff first, and then you kind of get used to doing it. There's less stuff on the wall, there's less furniture, there's less clothes, and as things get smaller, it gets a little easier to just then make it smaller. But yeah, there's things that are difficult.
Yeah. Is your son still in college or did he finish?
He graduated during COVID. He's working in Canada. Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, what about his room? How did you handle that?
Yeah.
Did you say, come and get everything?
Well, kind of. So, I went through there, there were things that were easy to figure out. But no, when he visited, so he was only down a couple of times. So he came to visit me in the summer. I decided to move. He visited in the summer of that year. And I just was like, you have to do this. So within, it was pretty brutal for him, I'm sure. Went through a ton of his stuff. I told him he could keep some of it in storage, and he still has a little bit in my storage, but he was good. He got rid of most of it and then moved, took some of it back to he lived in a different city. So he took some of it with him. He gave some to his friends. He did
nice.
He needed to do. He was back again at Christmas right before I left. So then there were a few lingering things. I'd meanwhile sold all his furniture or given furniture.
Oh my goodness.
So I think he slept on an air mattress, if I'm not mistaken. We got to do.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what did your son think of you moving to Albania?
There was no complaints. I think the general reaction was, oh, okay. And acceptance. As I say, he'd gone to college in a different city and he stayed there. So we were already used to, not being in each other's space all the time. It is hard. It's hard every time I say goodbye to him. It breaks my heart a little.
Oh my God.
But we get over it. And realistically, we only saw each other a few times a year at the most.
Right.
We do video calls now. We started that during COVID. So yeah, it's always going to be heartbreaking when we part company, but in the interim, we're okay. Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. And your son's going to have a hard time. And that's okay that he has a hard time because it's part of growing up.
Yep.
Yeah. I have a question about your art. So you didn't take any of your finished artwork to Albania?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, that was hard. Putting it in the storage unit. And so I put in the storage unit in December 2021. And then I was still in my apartment for the month of December. And then I gave up my apartment and I moved in with my mom for a month and a half. So, but yeah, when I closed that storage unit and then went home, the walls are bare and all, it was hard because I'm used to having, my paintings are mine.
Yeah. Of course.
They're my creations and they're so much. They're just so much. So yeah, it was difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm starting over here. Like I'm painting now and I'm starting over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to the weather. What's the weather like there? Is it Mediterranean climate?
Yeah. So for the most part, yes. Pogradec is a little higher elevation, so it's not quite as hot as the coast. So the coast, it can get up to like 40 degrees. It's hot in the summer. So here in the summer, it can get up to 30, 31, but it cools off also at night. In the summer, the weather in Pogradec is fantastic. In the winter, it's also cooler than the rest of the country. So Tirana is actually quite moderate in the winter, even, quite pleasant. Here it can be about, I'm going to speak in Celsius because I don't know.
That's fine.
But in Celsius here, the winter, 1 or 2 degrees, at night might go to -2 at night. During the day, maybe 5 degrees. But I'm coming from Ottawa. So in Ottawa, in February, it's -30, sometimes -40 with the wind. So it's nothing. It's really nothing.
So this is paradise for you.
It truly is. And I no nostalgia for the snow. I'm over it. I don't care if I ever see snow again. I actually do see snow on the mountaintops. And there are regions of Albania in the north that do get snow, but I don't need to see them. I would say the climate is quite good.
Yeah, 40 in the 40s is high. I remember one of our colleagues is in, I think in Spain, and he said it was 44. So I looked it up, of course, and it was well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's hot. That's hot.
Yeah, yeah. So your apartment, is it air conditioned?
Yes. And I will say that people that are actually, this would apply to anywhere in Europe. Make sure the apartment, or if Airbnb or whatever that you rent or buy, or rent anyway, I guess is most relevant, has an aircon unit. And usually they're all in one. So they do both heat and air conditioning.
Right. Okay.
Because it's cold. There is no insulation. The houses are built of concrete. There is no drywall. It's literally painted concrete for the most part.
Okay.
Some places might have a little bit of board, but there's no insulation. So when it is, 5 degrees Celsius outside, you're cold in your house.
Right.
Some apartments do not have these aircon units. They might have a plug-in heater, which is not sufficient. You're going to be uncomfortable.
Okay.
And this is not just Albania. I hear this from people that live in, Italy, Spain, anywhere there's not insulation in the home. Central air is not really a thing here. So that is something when you're looking at housing anywhere, to be mindful of the heat and air conditioning units. But yes, my apartment has 3 units, which is fantastic.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. I think I would not be a happy person. Jean knows I would not be a happy camper.
No, in your home, you should be comfortable. In Albania, because incomes are low, often, if you're in someone else's home or businesses, they won't have the heat on. It's quite common. You go into a shop in the winter and they're just in their coat in the shop.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're tough.
Right.
Not so willing to be tough in my home. I want to be warm and comfortable.
Sure. To be able to do what you need to do without being tightened. I forgot to mention, where is the nearest international airport?
So Tirana would be only international airport in Albania. They're building a small one somewhere else. And it's about 2.5 hours drive, or 2.5 hours by bus from Pogradec, which is, to me, not a problem. There is smaller airports in North Macedonia. I think in Ohrid, there's a town called Ohrid, or Skopje. It's a little further drive. I mean, if you have a vehicle, it might be easy to get there, a few hours. But Tirana is the one I always fly out of.
Since we're on that topic, I assume you don't have a car, correct?
No.
Okay. And do you need one?
No. I mean, if I want, I would have been able to see more of Albania with one, because, it has limited infrastructure. There's no trains, but there is a bus system, but it's limited and you have to sort of learn what the routes are and when they go and that, but it's there. There's a lot of private drivers. I mean, you can always get anywhere with a private driver, but it's going to cost you. You don't need one. I don't want one.
So public transportation is readily available, and it seems you take the bus everywhere, right?
Yeah, I take the bus everywhere. Occasionally, I will have a driver. Like when I came back from Canada, I had 3 large checked bags plus 2 small ones. So I knew I was coming back with stuff. So I hired a driver to bring me from the airport to here. And that cost me 110 euros.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a lot, but it's also in that situation.
That's not bad because it's far.
2 hours though, right?
Yeah,
that's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
Well, it is bad based on what my income is.
Yes.
So it's a big expense.
It's all relative. Yes.
Yeah,
no,
it's all relative. And normally I would take I'd take the shuttle from the airport, which would cost me about $4. And then I would take bus from Tirana to here, which would cost me another $6.
So there's no train in town.
0 trains in the country.
Oh,
in the country.
oh wow.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Now, here's the fun part. And that is when you walk outside of your complex, can you just take a couple of steps for a cafe?
Oh, there's a cafe every 4 feet here.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
There's a huge
the
cafe.
beauty. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all actually bar/cafe.
Mhm.
So it's alcohol and coffee and no food. And then a restaurant is another type of establishment for the most part. There's some that sort of cross the lines and do both.
Sure.
But there's so many cafes. Yeah. Big coffee culture here. And it's good coffee too. And it's not expensive.
So what's not expensive? Like what is a latte or cappuccino? Anything.
So an espresso is about $1.
Oh,
Or less, even
nice.
70 cents. In Pogradec, it's going to be maybe a little cheaper, but it might soar as high as, $1.50 in Tirana. I think a macchiato is $1.50. It's not huge. Everything is a bit smaller portion.
Right.
But
So,
coffee's very expensive.
Yeah, you may get frustrated with the medical care, but man, what a good time to have.
Yeah.
With the laptop and yeah.
Yeah. And the Rocky and wine is also similarly priced. So, dollar or two, you can satisfy that desire should you wish to. Yeah.
And how are the restaurants there?
The restaurants are good. I don't go out a lot. I mostly eat at home. The food is well prepared, but it's mostly in Pogradec, mostly traditional food. And then you've got pizza and sort of their version of a gyro, which is called souvlaki. It's called fast food. And it's basic. Like, you're not going to come to Albania for high cuisine. You're going to go to Italy. They win in the food department as far as I'm concerned. Okay. But it's good food. The food is mostly local and home prepared. So you're not going to get in Pogradec, you're not going to get tacos or Thai or you're going to get traditional food and pizza, and that's about it. In Tirana, there's more options. There's some Indian places. There's some Tex-Mex. I mean, I'm not familiar with them because I don't live there, but it seems like there's good food there as well, and it would be less expensive and than what you're used to in the States for sure.
Right.
Okay. So here's my question. You mentioned pizza places. So we live in Brooklyn, New York. And in New York City, so many Albanians open pizza shops.
Mm-hmm.
So many. Are there tons of pizza shops in Albania?
There's quite a few, yeah. I'm not 100% sure about this, but it sort of seems like when people don't know what else to do work-wise, they open either a bar cafe or a fast food place or a pizza place or a nail parlor or, they open just anything, something. So I think a lot of cases that's a pizza place or a cafe. They don't all last, of course. So I think, maybe they got to Brooklyn and they're like, well, I know how to do this. So this is what you do. You open a pizza. I don't know. Yeah. Everybody likes pizza, right? So
yeah.
It's a good.
No, I was just curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little about your art. Has living in Albania influenced your art?
Oh, I'm sure it has. I haven't completed enough works to really see it, but I think it's influenced the colors I use a bit. It certainly influenced my state of mind just because I'm so happy and I'm able to be in a relaxed state and also have a schedule that is very flexible. So it's much more conducive to art just in general. So I would say it's influenced me very indirectly. And directly, it has influenced me in that some of my subject matter is Albanian or things I see or experience here. So sort of indirectly, I would say, but time will tell more.
And what do you paint? I
used to paint only figures, nudes and clothed figures. I recently, since I've come here, I've finished one still life and I just started another one. So this is new for me. But I still also paint figures. So the figure painting is my main, what appeals to me the most, the type of art I like to look at, and what interests me. So that's still what I mostly focus on.
When you say figures, you mean human figures, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And where can people see your art?
So my whole website is karenespig.art. And then there's a section on art. There's a section on photography, which is all my travel photography. I also love taking pictures. There's a section on Oh, on my writing. So I've written some articles about, downsizing, about being an expat, about
Nice.
some of my travel experiences. So I'll do more of that too. That's sort of on my to-do list is more writing. So KarenEspig.art, and then just pick the section that interests you.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That's so nice.
Is there a big art scene in Pogradec?
No. And I'm still learning sort of what there are some artists here. There are actually a number of artists here. I've met a couple of them. They're older artists, but there's not what I would consider a community that I'm in. I think I'm just not there yet. And again, there's the language barrier and there's other barriers. So I don't have an art community here yet. There are artists here, but again, art culture in Albania is in early stages. And that's partly because it's developing, because incomes are low. So, art is not something people can just go out and buy. In Tirana, there are galleries, there are exhibitions, and there's, it's starting. But this is something that will take longer.
So you say you love living in Albania. Why do you love it?
Coming from a Western country where, we've got everything, right? In Canada and the US, it's really just a matter of money and knowing how to get something. But with that phenomenal structure and infrastructure and the privilege comes a lot of rules and a lot of it has to be done this way. You try to make an exception and it's not happening. You're within this rigid systems of things. Here, whatever systems are there, as I say, are fluid. And it can be frustrating because they don't make sense. But it's also refreshing because there's less rules. There's a lot more improvising. There's more just make it happen. It just feels freer, which I really enjoy. I love the landscape here. It's so beautiful. And it's wild too. Like there's no, fences around things. And even as I travel into Europe, even the art, it's on the buildings. It's not behind glass. It's, I'm not talking the Mona Lisa here. Most places, most museums, the art is accessible. The architecture is accessible. There's not a lot of rules around everything. So I really am enjoying the freedom of that and how it feels to have less rules. Yeah. It's not going to suit everybody. You have to kind of let go. In Albania, particularly, you need to let go of expecting things to go a specific way all the time because they won't. Right. Whereas, in a developed country, the rules, what's going to happen. That's it. Where there's comfort in. You've got to sort of let go of expecting that comfort. And the sooner you do, the happier you're going to be, in whatever country that you're choosing to be in.
And as an outsider, do you think you're welcomed by the locals?
I don't know because again, we've got this language barrier.
Yeah.
I know the family I live with, they talk to me like I'm a member of their family. They tell me, family, you don't knock on the door, you just come in. So they've really embraced me very openly. But I also mostly just get stared at by people when I'm walking in the street. They're not sure why I'm here. I'm confusing to them. But so I would say, yes, I'm certainly not treated badly. I'm kind of looked at with confusion, and the people I do have direct interactions with at some of the shops are very nice to me and lovely. And we try to stumble through conversations, and generally, yes, I'm accepted, but it's also, there is a very wide cultural gap, which I will never be able to cross. So making real friends here will be difficult and may never happen, like Albanian friends. I don't know. It hasn't happened yet.
I'm curious, what is it that makes you stand out? Is it your demeanor? Is it your dress? How do they even know that you're a foreigner? I mean, I know if
it's a million things. I'm a woman. I'm single. I travel alone. And so I'm here. I've arrived in this small town alone with my cat. I brought my cat. I have no husband with me. And then I gallivant off to destinations all by myself. And this is just not the way of life here.
Okay. Because that's commonplace here,
It's not here. Like women. So again, I'm in a small town. Tirana is going to be different. Here, the women, male and female roles are generally very traditional to what Albania has established, which is very, very different from what I want and need as a woman, a Western culture. So there's that. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
I
No,
think I
no.
don't know enough either. Like, I think over time I'll learn more as I start to connect with other Albanians. I'll
Right.
learn more about what's actually going on. I just sort of, that's my feeling about what's going on.
So basically, everything you need is there, though. The shops provide everything for your lifestyle. That doesn't seem to have changed that much, right? Are you able to order items online and have them delivered at least? No.
No.
So where do you get your art supplies and what have you if you run out?
I did bring a basic set with me when I first
Sure,
came,
of course.
because I wasn't sure where I was going to find everything. But since then, I have found, options. In Pogradec, there's a few places that sell where I can get canvases, where I can get inexpensive art supplies, but not great quality. In Tirana, there are a couple of very good art stores that have good quality paint, solvents, canvases, easels, that type of thing.
Right.
Sometimes I buy stuff there. Often when I travel, I'll buy stuff. So when I was in Italy, I bought some paintbrushes. When I was in North Macedonia, there's an art store which has the solvents I like. Your only limitation is if it's a liquid, of course, it has to be unchecked a bit.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's the challenge.
Right.
It has to be a land journey if you're bringing back liquids. But no, I mean, you figure it out.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yeah, I was just wondering. All right. Well, we've taken up a ton of your time. We thank you for everything you've shared and more. We had all of our questions answered through your responses. They were so rich and very flourishing. So we thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Is there anything that you want to add? Anything we missed?
Just, for people that are thinking and researching, and at some point you're going to have to stop thinking and stop researching and just do it. And I encourage you to not wait till things are perfect and just do it and figure it out, because it's not going, no matter where you're going to go and no matter how well you plan it, it's going to be different on the end of where you land. And that's just fine. And it'll still be great. And just do it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm happy that you sent a photo of one of your works of art. Beautiful. No person in there, but.
Yeah, that's what I haven't finished those yet.
Yeah. No, she's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it was so nice. What a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you know someone who's relocated for retirement and wishes to share their story with us, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is gg@retirethere.com. Our website is retirethere.com, and you may follow us on Twitter @retirethere_. Now, if you've liked our show, please subscribe and rate it in Apple Podcasts. In the meantime, be well.